Dr. Seward's Diary, 8th July. There is a method in his madness, and the rudimentary idea in my mind is growing. It will be a whole idea soon, and then, oh, unconscious celebration. You will have to give the wall to your conscious brother. I kept away from my friend for a few days, and so I might notice if there is any change. Things remain as they were, that he has parted with some of his pets and got a new one. He has managed to get a sparrow, and has already partially tamed it. His means of taming is simple, for already the spiders have diminished. Those that do remain, however, are well fed, where he still brings in the flies by tempting them with his food.
Wait, that's it? That was really it for this week? I mean, okay, that's not gonna really give us a whole lot to talk about, but... Oh god, it's already time for me to sing, isn't it? Okay. Me.
It's time for Dracula Weekly. It's time for Dracula Weekly. I really thought that figuring out how to help Jonathan and Mina would be easier than this somehow.
Well, at least we have a plan C right now. Granted, it involves, unleashing popcorn onto Dracula, but it'll be just like that scene for the Mummy. So, Callie, if you end up listening to this, get ready to eat the cat.
I mean, that was a mummy, not a vampire, but... Oh, hi, dear listeners. Welcome to Dracula Weekly. I'm your host, Jasmine Garcia. Joining me today is
Shamila Karanakaran, feeling very ironic today of all days, and no, I will not explain the joke.
Oh, yeah, no, that is private. But yeah, there's actually not a lot in terms of actual Dracula novel content this week. It's literally just a tiny... I mean, would we call it dramatic irony with Dr. Seward? Given the fact that obviously when people first read it, they wouldn't have known what Renfield was doing. But for us, it definitely is dramatic irony.
Yeah, I would say it still counts.
Fair enough. Yeah, so Renfield now has a pet sparrow, and I'm sure nothing bad will happen. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to that sparrow.
Nope. It's immediately that scene in the Nosferatu trailer. No.
I did see that. Yeah, that. Whoo, boy.
That is hardcore.
It makes me think, but in the Dracula Daily book, there's a little fan art of Renfield with his birds and spiders and whatnot, looking like a goth Disney princess, basically. And people have definitely tweeted about that. It's just like, oh, you don't know what's coming.
Nope. There's a reason this is a gothic Disney princess.
Yep. Which is actually really funny because I don't know if you're familiar with Tawny on TikTok and YouTube shorts and stuff.
I don't.
Tawny Plattis?
No, I don't think I've heard of them. I told you, I live under a rock.
Fair enough. She is a voice actress, and her main thing is doing here's what very specific subgenre of thing says about you, what your favorite version of it says about you, but also does a lot of voice acting stuff. And she recently did basically a pitch for a goth Disney princess who crosses over with all the other princesses. And basically it's just, a story about, you can be yourself and still be a princess, more or less. And people in the comments obviously already ship her with Merida, says they're the only ones with no song. At least in terms of the official lineup. Although then I said, okay, but we can give Drusilla a heavy metal ballad. That'd be neat. But anyway, yeah, it's just Renfield, buddy. Dracula's just not that into you. I thought that was what that Renfield movie was all about.
Pretty much, yeah.
Man, between that and the Nosferatu thing coming out and all these other things, Dracula's had a weird few years, hasn't he?
He's worn too many hats.
That gives me an idea. I have a theory about why we've been getting not just so many Dracula adaptations, but so many that are just of vastly different tones. It's like a microcosm of just his entire history of being adapted, since Dracula is one of the most adapted characters. My theory is it's because the Dark Universe didn't happen, basically. I mean, we see that with a whole bunch of other monsters when you think about it. I mean, we had Lisa Frankenstein coming out. We had that badass Invisible Man movie. And, of course, Guillermo del Toro is throwing his hat in the ring with that Frankenstein one. It's just feels like now that there's not the borderline threat of the Dark Universe really happening, though we'll get into that later, I guess people have just felt like being extra wild and creative. So, you know what? We are going to go over some of the highlights of that ever since the 2020s started, basically, because we're bordering on it being 5 years of very weird Dracula adaptations.
Yeah. Like, back in 2020, even in January alone, we unfortunately have to start off with that stupid Dracula show.
Moffat.
Not the one with Katie McGrath. Not the one with Katie McGrath. The other one. The other one.
Yeah, Moffat. We keep on... I'm sorry to H. Bomber guy. They did not stop giving him British pop culture icons.
Someone stop him.
Please.
So, Claes Bang of, like, the Northman fame, so any of you Robert Eggers fans will definitely know this. He plays the titular character. If that's not enough, they dragged in another public domain vampire into this.
Yes, Lord Ruthven. I haven't read John William Polidori's The Vampire, but if I'm not mistaken, that was a major inspiration for Dracula.
Yeah, but when I first told you this, you immediately thought of another public domain vampire.
I was so afraid that Moffat put his grimy lesbian erasing hands on my beloved Carmilla. I am so very glad that wasn't the case.
No Carmillas were harmed in the making of this.
Honestly, it doesn't surprise me that he didn't, because I have a weird feeling he does not know who Carmilla is. Because the thing is, people pretty much automatically got bisexual vibes from Dracula and Jonathan's interactions in the show. And once again, Moffat provides a great little quotation for all the Tumblr girlies to yell about.
Oh, do we want to know what it is?
Yes, we do. He said, he's bi-homicidal. It's not the same thing. He's killing them, not dating them. He's not actually having sex with anyone. He's drinking their blood. You might need to delete your Tinder if that's what you think. Dracula has always fed off men and women. And I'm just like, tell me you don't understand queer coding without telling me, Moffat. Although I guess I can't be surprised, given your track record, sir. But no, honestly, Moffat putting his mitts on Carmilla after what he did to lesbian Irene, and also that one lizard woman and her wife from Doctor Who. Thank God.
The one who was based off Sherlock Holmes, I think?
Yes, in canon, she's like the inspiration for the Sherlock Holmes stories, which we really should have put in elementary, my dear players. Oh well. And in slightly better news, because all of the Broadway actors obviously had very little to do during the height of the pandemic, it was either do the Ratatouille musical or do Dracula Comedy of Terrors podcast. Like, seriously, this cast was stacked. And we will get more into a Comedy of Terrors later, but you had Annaleigh Ashford, Laura Benanti, Richard Kind, James Monroe Iglehart, Ashley Park, Alan Tudyk, and Alex Brightman. Like, the only cast I can think of more stacked is probably Has Been Hotel. Although Ashley Park was in this and the Ratatouille musical, so perhaps my little joke earlier wasn't accurate.
And this was in May, same year.
Yes.
And just from the voice cast alone, that at least qualifies for a degree 3.
Oh, fun. Oh, and the Brides. Oh.
Yep. June, like the ABC pilot of The Brides, it was gonna have Goran Visiniak play Dracula, but it never got picked up. It would have... We could have gotten him and Gina Torres on screen together. And it would have been a degree 3 to boot.
Yeah, no, I had heard about this. This was all over Tumblr for a while there, and as far as I can tell, this was one of the many casualties of the pandemic, unfortunately.
No.
There were so many good projects that fell by the wayside there, and while, of course, it doesn't nearly match the human loss, it's still just like, ugh. Thank you,
and it was yet another, like, Gina Torres adaptation vehicle that never got past the pilot.
What was the other one?
Death of Eva Sofia Valdez. It was supposed to be a Count of Monte Cristo adaptation.
Oh, that would have been fascinating. Damn it. I would love to have more Gina Torres on this podcast.
Exactly. And originally Count of Monte Cristo was actually based on Alexandre Dumas's father, who was he was black soldier, and then he was betrayed by his comrades and stuff. So having Dantes as a black man would make so much sense.
Oh, absolutely. I know they have another Count of Monte Cristo adaptation coming up, and unfortunately still looking lily white there.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I was so excited for this. But at the very least, we still have A Dowry of Blood. In January 2021, A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson was published. This is a novella from I've mentioned this before on the podcast. It's from the point of view of one of Dracula's brides. And it's just the highs and lows of being one of Dracula's brides, though ultimately she and the other brides and technically one groom all kind of band together to defeat him. Beautiful stuff, but obviously trigger warning for abusive relationships.
Yeah.
Easily one of my favorite books that I read last year.
Yeah, I think that was the inspiration for wanting to brides into Mutiny, like the last few Dracula weekly episodes.
Hey, maybe they, honestly, maybe that's how we break the time loop. We convince the brides to mutiny.
Ooh.
I think I'm onto something here. We'll throw that in the maybe pile. But other than that, as far as I'm aware, it was a pretty quiet year for Dracula adaptations. But then 2022 is when it really starts ramping up.
In September, we have The Invitation.
Yes. A stealth alternate universe sequel of Dracula that asks the chilling question, what if he won at the end of the Harker story? And also warns us of why we can't really trust those ancestry websites. But no, I watched it on Cinema Day that year, actually. Partially because I saw everybody just tweeting about how this is the Dracula fanfiction we always dreamed of. And I'm just like, okay, you officially have my attention. And it's really great. I consider it an excellent double feature for that and The Invisible Man. It's just these universal monster adaptations that are actually about the women that have been harmed by these monsters coming back and kicking ass, and it's great.
Yep. It makes it doubly so because it's a black woman doing all of this.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and it's all about class, and it has a lot of gothic romance in it. Although it is among the first of recent Dracula adaptations where a lot of people feel like they should not have revealed the twist in the marketing, and I am inclined to agree, because thankfully I did not see the trailers giving away the twist in the marketing, so I lucked out there.
Also, if I had a nickel every time a screwed over Game of Thrones black actor became the lead of a vampire horror project, have 2 nickels. It isn't a lot.
Oh my god.
But it's weird that it's happened twice.
Yep,
and guess who the other one is?
Jacob Anderson. Yes. Playing Louis.
Yep.
To perfection. I gotta say, I was so skeptical of how severely they were changing Louis' backstory, but pretty much as soon as the first trailer dropped, I was like, never mind, nope, this performance is perfect.
Yes.
Like, him just yelling through his confession.
That's me for I have sinned. I lay down with the devil, and I can't think nothing anymore. Lord, help me, I am weak, I want to die.
I was just like, that's for your consideration clip. Good job.
Yes. Also, The Invitation was actually originally titled The Bride, and that was a title of a 1985 horror film starring Jennifer Beals as the titular bride, only that was an adaptation of Frankenstein. So the nickels keep coming in pairs.
Indeed they do. That's crazy. And remember how we were saying how this is kind of the fault of the Dark Universe dying in its crib with The Mummy 2017? Well, again, bringing up Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? I am sure you're going to be able to start a drinking game with this, dear listeners. But yes, for those of you who don't know, it Dylan Roth and Dalton DeShane basically imagine what could have happened if the Dark Universe didn't die in its crib with the Mummy 2017. It's there we got the idea to cast Mads Mikkelsen as Dracula, which I suppose means that either Dylan and Dalton know something we don't, or we must consider the idea that all creatives are creating new entries into the multiverse. I have existential dread either way, to be honest.
Oh god. Then we really do have Tyler Posey as Quincy somewhere out in the multiverse.
Anyway, they went with the fascinating route of turning Dracula back into a human after his confrontation with the Dark Legion and House of Dracula, and he is now desperately trying to escape hell and get the souls of Nick Morton, Adelaide Van Helsing, and Set himself in exchange for it. Seriously, folks, just go listen to the podcast, and hopefully I'll be able to convince Dylan and Dalton to be guests someday.
Fingers crossed.
And next up, Reluctant Immortals, which longtime listeners know we've discussed at length already.
I swear to God, 40 or 50% of the way through this book, I'm like, where's the fucking reveal that Lucy is just in love with Bee? Where is that reveal? That's the reason she's so bitchy at Jane, is like partially because of all of the bullshit she has learned through Bee about what happened with Jane and Rochester and what have you, but also like the inherent eroticism of the only female friend you've ever had, or the only other female friend you've ever had.
Pals.
Just gals being pals, and they were roommates. yeah.
Shammy, did you happen to listen to that episode? I won't judge you right away.
I did.
Perhaps my theatrics in the beginning of that episode were not quite justified. But TLDR, Lucy Westenra and the first Mrs. Rochester, who goes by Bee now, must battle Rochester and Dracula in the 1960s. I personally adore this book, but and again, if you've listened to the episode, you know that River and Sam were a little more lukewarm about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year was where we got Renfield and the Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Mm-hmm. So Renfield premiered in March.
Mm-hmm.
And that was starring Nicholas Hoult as the titular role as Dracula's beleaguered thrall, and Nicolas Cage as the famous Count himself.
Which, I mean, not a bad cast, and I think everyone was pretty stoked to see Nicolas Cage hamming it up as Dracula.
Although I think I was more focused on Sheree Adaslu as Bafana, I think it was, or I forget like her name, but the mob boss, like, she was playing it up too.
Okay, I haven't seen Renfield yet, which is very funny, considering the fact it was this close to being the pilot of this podcast, actually. Literally off by one vote.
Mm-hmm.
I always said we would get back to it, but then the strike happened, and everything else kept on happening. We will get to it someday, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of the beginning of people being like, why the hell are you releasing a Dracula movie in the spring?
Mm-hmm. And then August was Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Yes. Again, not exactly time appropriate. And of course, right in the middle of this, the Disney remake of The Haunted Mansion came out in July. It's just all of these.
Yeah.
It's like why are we doing this? Why are we releasing all these movies? Like, I mean, considering what we learned during the strike, I now have a conspiracy theory that they were trying to shoot for getting streaming numbers around Halloween. And they don't have to pay as many residuals for that. Because that was what the strike was all about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have heard very good things about Last Voyage of the Demeter. I mean, my mother loved it, and she's very picky when it comes to the more fantastical stuff. But basically, it gives Dracula kind of the Great Comet treatment, in which they take a tiny little portion of it. And incidentally, we are going to be getting to the Demeter stuff next week. But yeah, they take this tiny little portion of that very last voyage of the Demeter and showing us what happened before the ill-fated ship reached London shores, loosing Dracula upon London.
And then, so from September to October, we got Dracula, Comedy A Tale of Errors, finally gets its much-deserved off-Broadway production. It's as unhinged as Dracula's stage entrance.
Which is indeed unhinged. I highly recommend anybody who is interested to look for clips on YouTube, because it is hysterical. I kind of need I kind of need a pro shot. Or at the
Yeah.
very least, I know that they do sell the play now, so I don't know. Maybe if we finally get IER Presents off the ground, we'll think about it.
Ooh. And then we also have Mina and Lucy's Guide to Slaying Dracula, middle school adaptation in podcast form by Gen Z Media. So basically here, Mina and Lucy are adapted into a pair of spooky preteens, and Van Helsing, who is voiced by Bradley Whitford, plays Mina's grandfather here.
Yes, we talked about this on a Retelling the News segment last year
Yeah.
because for one thing, we really, really needed some good Monster Month stuff. And also, we were just kind of excited to hear about this podcast. I did start it. I do need to finish it still.
Mm-hmm. I think it's 20 episodes, fully.
It is, yeah. But they're pretty short episodes. You could probably conceivably finish it in a work week.
Mm-hmm. We were originally considering doing a week-to-week thing, like Dracula Weekly thing, but Sam said something about it being it's a little bit too mad to do a podcast about a podcast.
And they're not wrong. We were still during the strike at that time, dear listeners. I was desperate.
Yes. And that was technically a degree 4, thanks to Toxologondoye.
Ooh, fun.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, this next one, Shami, you found out about this.
Yes. All through Tumblr, because everything I find out, I usually find out on my Dash. So, 2024, in March, the Finnish National Ballet did a production based on the 2018 West Australian ballet production. So the basic synopsis is that Dracula is a brooding ex-soldier haunted by the tragic loss of his wife. She committed suicide after mistaking belief she had lost him in battle, and then Dracula is inflicted by a curse, one that can only be lifted by love. He eventually encounters a young woman who looks strikingly similar to his late wife and is willing to help him. As he falls in love with her, he must make the ultimate sacrifice. Now, where have we heard that before?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula?
Exactly. It all goes back to that.
Oh, God. I don't know. Maybe we need to do that for the finale of this or something at this rate.
Oh, God. Also, the only reason I know about it, I found a gift set for it. It's on the blog somewhere. I'll probably put a link to it somewhere. It features Mikhail Kirschmar as young Dracula and Jun Jia as Jonathan. The entire sequence is basically Dracula ragdolling Jonathan around the castle before ending it with a very hearty handshake, and Jonathan's reaction is basically, well, I guess this is the solicitor life?
Gay!
Yeah.
Like, yeah, good lord. I mean, sounds fascinating. Even if it is reminding me of Francis Ford Coppola stuff, which I have mixed feelings on, as you probably all know.
But a good thing, like half of the cast are half of the principal cast is have Asian ballet dancers, so at least not all
cool.
pasty white.
That is cool. I appreciate that. Oh, and one of my favorite entries in this one, Abigail Melissa Barrera, my beloved. It sucks that it didn't do that well. But
I still
this
say
is another...
that it shouldn't have gotten spoiled that because
everyone and their mother has basically said that.
Yeah, and it originally was called Dracula's Daughter because this was originally a remake of the 1936 version, which is based on. It was originally supposed to be like a singular continuity, like the 2017 Mummy.
Okay. So basically, this was originally gonna be part of the Dark Universe, then.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That clearly went vastly different directions there, because I'm kind of glad they didn't title it Dracula's Daughter, because A, that would have made people talking about how the marketing spoiled everything even stronger, and B, obviously Dracula's Daughter, the one from the 30s, is a very different story.
I think
one of my favorite
that was
Universal
basically
monster
like a
movies,
proto Carmilla, at least in film adaptations.
In terms of film adaptations, sure. Because, it was greatly inspired by Carmilla, so it's doubly eligible for this podcast. Woohoo. But no. Maria Zaleska, she is wife. She is wife. And Abigail decidedly is not, thank goodness, considering that she is still in the form of a
Abigail's
little
daughter.
girl. Abigail is daughter. Like, I love this movie, even though I recognize that the story itself is kind of messy. But Radio Silence is just, they're so gonzo when it comes to horror directing. They are not afraid to get very weird and creative, and not afraid to make it super bloody. Like, they are very big on blood explosions, and I kind of thank them for it. And I'm sorry, how many vampire movies come up with the idea of basically a vampire puppeting their thrall into doing a ballet dance? That's so cool. It's so creepy, and I love it.
Also, next up to Nichols, because I think this is Catherine Newton's second public domain
Universal Monster thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been busy this year, and she has won my heart, honestly. But yeah, I will say, if there is a flaw to Abigail, it's that it can't seem to decide if it wants Abigail to just be a straight-up villain or a tragic villain. And it kind of tries to have it both ways, and it's like, yeah.
Just stick to one.
The found family vibes at the end were not earned.
Also, coming this October, there is a Dracula reboot set to be debuting on Halloween. So Dion Taylor and Roxanne Avon Taylor, they're set to produce. They're doing a special Halloween screening of the original Dracula on October 24th at the Fine Arts Theater in Beverly Hills. The reboot is supposed to be set in a metropolitan city post-COVID, and there's no word yet on who's going to be starring in the title role, for example, but they're going to be following in the footsteps of William Marshall, who played the part in both the original and the sequel, Scream, Dracula, Scream. Our current fan cast forerunner is Coleman Domingo, because like Sam said, he can get it.
Get it.
We do have a synopsis, though, which is as follows. Dracula is an ancient African prince who is cursed by Dracula after he fails to end the slave trade. Dracula is entombed and awakened 200 years later, ready to avenge the death of his ancestors and of those responsible for robbing his people of their work, culture, and heritage as they appropriated it for profit. So I'm sensing a lot of possible parallels to the Candyman remake in that sense, which Coleman Domingo was also in.
Yeah, and it's really going for the social horror aspect. I am actually really intrigued by this synopsis. Like, that could be really, really cool. And, well, speaking of letting the marginalized do a Dracula thing, I did forget to mention that Kirsten White is also releasing Lucy Undying this fall. I've read Kirsten White before, specifically The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and I really loved that book, so I'm actually cautiously optimistic of her tackling yet another monster. And who knows, maybe Sam and River will like this one better.
Fingers crossed.
Yep. And do we really want to talk about the Luc Besson of it all?
I really don't want to, or at least let them know it is, but we are not touching this with a 10-foot pole for obvious reasons.
Let me preface this, dear listeners. Up until now, pretty much everything that we have discussed so far, I would be more than happy to do an episode on. This one, I'm probably not touching with a 10-foot pole, because while technically the charges have been dropped, I do not trust Luc Besson. But Dracula Love Tale is coming out next year. Apparently he's directing with his wife. And it currently stars Caleb Landry Jones and Christoph Waltz, which...
Guess which one is playing Dracula?
Is it Christoph?
No.
Really?
No. He's playing a priest.
Oh. So Caleb is playing Dracula?
Yes.
Interesting.
And by interesting, I mean, what on earth is up with this casting?
I mean, I'm not against it, because, we've discussed this before on the podcast. Dracula can be both young and old, so it's not necessarily the worst idea, but it's certainly counterintuitive.
Honestly, I would prefer Christoph Waltz in this because he has the unhinged energy in order to pull off Dracula.
Obviously, like, we all first knew him as the bad guy in Inglourious Bastards, and he was fantastic in that. So, yeah, I want to see Christoph Waltz play a vampire now. I'm bummed out that won't happen. Oh, and of course, I can't believe we forgot the one thing that kind of started this conversation. This December, the Nosferatu remake is coming out.
Yep.
For
That one
those
is also
listeners
an Eggers production.
Yes, so we come full circle, kind of, in a weird way. But yes, for those listeners who do not know and are listening to a Dracula podcast somehow, Nosferatu, the original one, the silent film, was a very weak attempt to kind of sneakily make a Dracula when they weren't allowed to make a Dracula. Stoker's widow did not approve, to the point where it was almost a lost film. So, I don't know, there is something very cool about the fact that this almost lost film is now getting this lush modern adaptation. Like, from what I've seen in the trailer, I am very intrigued. Weird that it's coming out around Christmas, though, so we probably won't get to it. We probably won't be doing anything Nosferatu related.
I already see the Bill Skarsgård girly going nuts over this.
Oh, that too. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Yeah, oh my god. How many monsters is that man gonna play to make everybody thirst over him?
Oh god. And this is a degree 4! Because of Ralph Ineson.
Oh, true. And also, it's just very funny that Willem Dafoe has gone from playing the actor who played Orlok to playing the equivalent of Van Helsing in this. I just think that's fun and ironic.
Yes.
But, yeah, like I said, Dracula's been having a weird 2020s, just like the rest of us, I guess.
Also, we didn't bring this up because nothing is confirmed, but the Blade reboot with Mahershala Ali, well, technically we don't know if Dracula's gonna be an antagonist there, but here's hoping.
He's been an antagonist for Blade before, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of the possible. And, yeah, like, on the one hand, I guess I'm glad that Marvel is taking its time to make sure this is good. But on the other hand, as our dear friend Connor says, how fucking hard can it be to write a movie about a vampire who fights other vampires? And obviously Mahershala Ali is not happy with whatever they are trying to do.
No. Give him the movie he deserves.
Please. That man is a national treasure. Even if he was in Green Book. You guys should check out Ellie's podcast.
I forgot Ellie's podcast was covering that.
Yeah, it just did. You should all listen to Ellie's podcast. That episode includes Ellie and Sam. They just spent like an hour roasting Green Book, and it was great. But, again, yeah. Dracula's having a weird decade, and we still gotta figure out a way to defeat him.
Nope.
Apologies to Jonathan and Mina. It was gonna be tougher than we thought.
I still say we recruit the brides. We'll offer Ellie and Callie as bait.
Yes. We'll keep on workshopping. Anyway, any final thoughts?
At the rate this is going, the 2020s are going to be a very wild decade for Dracula.
Couldn't agree more. And also, stop giving Renfield pets.
No.
Perhaps this is premature, considering the fact the reveal has not happened yet. Stop, but I don't care. I will take advantage of my pop culture knowledge. Stop giving Renfield pets. Oh, and also, you didn't really need a Renfield movie because the Dracula 1931 version was already a Renfield movie.
Everyone always forgets that.
Yeah, like, one day we will talk about that, so I'm not going to go too into it, but yeah, he's the main character. You got stuff to plug, Shami?
You can find me on the online news on Tumblr, and my GoFundMe is still up, so any help is greatly appreciated.
Well, sorry for the fact that there's most likely not going to be a proper review episode this week, but hopefully our discussions of vampires will be enough to qualify for Wrath Month. And as always, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Faye Riviera. You could also follow the show on Twitter at IER Podcast. And if you would like to help us reach the next chapter of our story, please consider leaving us a review or rating us on the podcatcher of your choice, telling all of your friends and family about us. And even better, if you have room in your wallets, please consider donating to our Patreon, our Ko-Fi page, or just the support the show link below. And now let's close out this week's Dracula Weekly. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Harker, we are still working out a plan to get you guys out of the time loop. So far, our best ideas are getting the brides to mutiny against Dracula or throwing our friend Callie's cat at Dracula. We'll keep you posted. Sincerely, Jasmine.